Carter.
Yes, good day, board members and staff. I'd like to ask Ms. Janet Hernandez to lead us in the invocation and then followed by the pledge of allegiance.
Dear Lord, we ask for your blessing upon this gathering of leaders united to advocate on behalf of the students of Southwest ISD. Guide us in the work that we embark on today and help us fulfill our duties to the best of our abilities, always in the interest of the community we serve. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Can I ask everyone to remain standing just for a second, a moment of silence for the tragedy that happened in Las Vegas, and I think it's worthy of our time to take a moment of silence in my own thought.
All right, the first thing on the agenda is the maintenance agreement on the rooftop.
Yes, sir. Good morning. The existing contract with Gillette Air Conditioning for maintenance of the rooftop HVAC systems expired on August 31st of 2017. They actually just did not renew their contract with us for the next 2 years. So Southwest ISD issued a request for proposals on September 5th, 2017 for services needed, and the district received 3 proposals on September 19th. The contract period will be from October 4th, tomorrow, through August 31st, 2020, with 2 additional 1-year extensions. Scope of work includes general annual cleaning inspections as part of the preventative maintenance program for all rooftop furnaces, burners, compressors, condensers, units, fans, motors, bearings, evaporator coils, and bi-monthly filter changes through the district, and to be on call for emergency service 24 hours, 7 days a week through this yearly contract. The proposals were evaluated based on the published selection criteria, including district specifications. Airstream AC and Heating Company was selected as the best value for the district. District staff recommends that the board approve awarding a maintenance contract for rooftop HVAC systems from October 4, 2017 through August 31, 2020, with 2 additional 1-year extensions for a contract amount of $254,880 per year to Airstream Heating and AC Company. Fiscal impact is $254,880 per year, and that is budgeted funds.
Question? Any motion?
I move.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Contract with Palo Alto College and Alamo Community College on North.
Good morning.
Our director, Eliza Battles, will present this one.
Good morning. I wanted to get their approval to have a CNA program with Southwest in conjunction with Palo Alto. There'll be 90 students. Last year we had 36 in the program, so that's the jump. That's why the number is jumping from 25 last year to 73,000 this year.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
No. Motion carried. Thank you, ma'am. All right, item 6, pension bond refunding.
Yes, sir. Today I got with me Mark McCliney and Andrew Friedman. They come to the district to talk to us about a possible refunding opportunity. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mark and let him.
There's at your dais, there's a little book here that we put together, and we will be quick because we know you have to be out here at 12:45. You have $57,125,000 worth of bonds that are callable come February 1st, 2022. We can pursue that refunding, what's called an advance refunding, because we're way ahead of that call date in 2022. Wanted to let you know, if interest rates stay the same, savings get greater as we approach that February 1st, 2022 date. And that savings is substantial. If we would pursue the entire refunding right now, savings would be about $4.5 million, which is a great savings. But if interest rates stay the same, which I know they will not stay the same, but if they would stay the same, and we get to the call date, savings increase to $9.3 million. So a great reason to wait, but there's no time like a bird in the hand versus two in the bush. So what we're suggesting is that we pursue a bank-qualified refunding. That means $10 million or less that will enable us to get 25 or 30 basis points lower interest rate than if we do a larger bond. And by doing that, we think we could lock in interest rates and get savings of approaching $720,000. Again, a huge reduction from what we're talking about, either the $4.5 million or even the 9.3. But what we would do is we would take $10 million and refund those. Look next year as we approach that and either do another bank qualified refunding or grab the whole amount and do it in 2018. We'll keep monitoring it, possibly pushing it to 2019 if interest rates don't get higher. But this, by doing a $10 million piece, we're basically pursuing a hedge versus higher interest rates. We'll lock in a portion of those savings right now. I wanted to show you on that second page, and there's page numbers on the bottom right, on page 4 is what it is, the chart. Since 2012, the yellow bar going right across the middle is the average interest rates that they've been. You can see back in 2013, they were up over 5%. As soon as a year ago, they were down closer to 3%. But the average is right about where we are now. We're below that average. Rates will go up and down. The Fed is talking about raising rates. But we think by grabbing some savings now, we're not losing the opportunity next year and the following year into 2022 to gather those savings where we'll get more than the 4.5 now. We probably won't get all that $9 million, but we'll start getting in between 4.5 to that 9, somewhere in there by getting $10 million this year, possibly 10 next year, and so forth. We're just going to start just monitoring it very closely. You can see on page 5, the far right-hand column is if we do the $10 million bank qualified issue, savings are on the far right hand, roughly $50,000 a year. That's going to change up and down depending what final interest rates we would get. One of the things, and this is page 6, and this is important because it is out of favor right now. And in fact, the state has tried to prohibit schools from using CABs, their capital appreciation bonds or zero coupon bonds. Back in 2015, the laws state that you couldn't issue more CABs greater than 25% of your total portfolio, and that was a cap. Now you can do that. However, it has to be for a refunding, but you still cannot exceed 25%. On the very bottom, you'll see if we go before, right now we have 15% of our bonds that are current or capital appreciation bonds. After this refunding, we're at 16.39%. So we're nowhere near what the state government's saying we cannot go over. CABs remain a tool to use. And the reason they're out of favor is because it basically kicks interest down to the future. We issue bonds now, we're not paying interest on them for multiple years. So there's a reason schools use them, and that's to manage their 50-cent tax rate limitation. We need construction now. We don't have any room in that 50 cents, but we need to do it now. The only way you can issue bonds is to issue CABs. We're not at the 50-cent limit. We're nowhere near the 50-cent limit. We have a fair amount of CABs. We actually issued those only CABs that you have outstanding in anticipation of the law changing so that you wouldn't be prevented in the future. So we just pointed out because they are out of favor, and we would have to issue about $4 million worth of cabs on this refunding. Again, it's not, they are a good tool to use, and we're no reason, or we're not pushing it up towards the maximum so that if that tool is handy for you in the future, you still have the room. If you all want to proceed, and now we're on page 8, we would like to get direction on an underwriting team. We've had a pool that we have used, and you can see since 2013 who our lead manager has been and who the co-managers have been. The size of that pool on each issue, or the size of the underwriting team on each issue, is much determined by the size of the issue. On this issue, we're recommending just 2, and we're recommending Raymond James as the lead manager with Estrada as the co-manager. The reason we are using Raymond James and Estrada is they're the 2 that are the most attentive to the district. They're the ones that come to Brandon with ideas, show Andrew and I the ideas, trying to make sure that we all know they're working on our behalf. So those are the 2 that have shown the most interest over the years to Southwest ISD. And then the reason we chose Raymond James was solely because last bond issue, 2016, was Estrada, and Raymond James hasn't been the lead manager since 2013. That is just a recommendation. That is not anything but more than that. Page 9 shows the timing if you all want us to proceed under this scenario. We would come back October 17th and authorize a parameter sale, which would give Dr. Versliff and Mr. Crisp the ability to approve the sale. We would price November 16th, about then, and we would close middle of December. So we think knocking it into a $10 million piece, a bank-qualified piece, locks in interest rates, starts providing a hedge. If we see rates going higher quickly, we'll come back in 2018 and do the same thing, or try to refund all $45 million that would be left over. Those decisions will be up to you as a board and business decisions, but we'll keep staff abreast. If we see it, we'll be back here at a brown bag or at a board meeting to have discussions.
So, Mark, you think that it's riskier for us to wait till 2022?
Yolanda, I think
Because
the Fed is talking about raising rates.
Right.
The Fed controls overnight rates. They don't control the 10-year bond. In this, our bonds follow the 10-year, but they tend to start following one another. Right. The idea, if we wait till then and rates go higher, we may end up below this $4.5 million that would be a full refunding right now.
Right.
So we're going to try to get savings now, try to get more savings the next. We may end up doing $10 million this year, $10 million next year, $10 million in 20, and then the balance in 22.
Right.
But the longer we can wait, we will get better savings if rates don't stay the same. And so it's kind of a judge, we're kind of going, rates we think are going like this, let's get some savings and just keep pounding those savings every year and try to get so that we won't get to 9 million.
Right, we won't get as much, but the loss may be.
The bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush.
Got it.
I'd hate to wait and then all of a sudden rates go to 5% and we don't get 4 million.
Correct.
So the goal would be to get more than 4.5 million, which is what we could do right now.
Floor, right.
And get some now, get some next year, get some the following year, so that the combination turns out to be greater than 4.5, but less than the 9.5.
Okay.
That's the goal. If rates skyrocket tomorrow, we may come back and say we made a mistake. But if you look back at that chart, see our rates in 2012, it would not have worked then when they were up here, but just a year later they were back below. Rates in 2008 were even lower than they are back in 2016. So they go up and down, and we may miss an opportunity, but by 2022, that may be back to that we're closer to the 9 million again.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's not a correct answer. If you said, let's roll the dice, let's just wait until 2022, I wouldn't say you're wrong.
But it's higher risk.
It's higher risk.
Well, board members, do you want to do what we normally do? Give Mr. Crispin, this first off, the authority to go and look into
We'll
this,
bring that,
make any moves.
We'll have to bring that in the form of an action item, October 17th. If that's y'all's direction, that what we'll do to work towards, give that delegation to bring it, and myself. So we think we've been through this with Mark and Andrew, and we're looking for cost savings, and this opportunity is there to garner some. And I think it's our position that we should take what we know we can take right now.
Great.
Just kind of, hopefully, nothing changes drastically, but we have to come back and say we can't do it.
One thing I would just add, you did, I'm sorry?
We get that money now?
It's over those years. If you looked on that far right-hand column, $50,000 a year.
Okay.
But one thing, if bank qualified is done by the calendar year. You're clean this year. We could come back, if rates start going up in January, and do another 10 million and get another $500,000 worth of savings just right away. But the longer we can wait, the higher that would be. So we may hold off until this time next year and get that last 10 million, or the next 10 million. But we'll just keep monitoring and keeping you all abreast.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And again,
Thank you.
our practice is just to keep you all in the loop, and then we'll be here October 17th to get authorization.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, sir.
All right, the archives at Legacy High School.
I'm gonna bring up Miss Alvarez. Miss Alvarez had the task to create our archive room. And so if you go to Legacy High School, if you walk into the archive room, you get to see kind of the historical of our area. Plus, she had set up, we have a historical for Legacy. So I'm gonna turn it over to her, so let her present.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for introducing me. As you mentioned, I curated the archive room, so illustrating the region's history, the district's history. Currently, I'm the fellow in museum studies at the McNay Art Museum. Prior to that, I taught at UTSA some undergraduate art history courses. But this story is near and dear to me. I went to Big Country Elementary School for a little while, and then I grew up, right? And now I'm here. So this is my story as much as it is your story. So I'll try to get through 200 to 300 years of history in about 15 minutes or so. Okay. So all of this information, just to let you know, is presented in the archive room, so please go visit. I'm doing some finishing touches today, and so we'll really pack a punch after that. But as far as San Antonio is concerned, we're looking at a map here from 1896. It's really difficult to see the details, but there's a blown-up version in the room. So we know that 1700s, early San Antonio developed around the Presidio Mission complex. So we have European settlers initially comprised of Franciscan missionaries, Spanish and Mestizo soldiers arriving to the area by the 18th century. We have Canary Islanders that arrived soon after, and so we're looking at an image of San Fernando Cathedral, which was built at the behest of the Spanish government for the Canary Islanders that arrived soon after. So notable families of this area of the southwest area in particular are going to be the Ruiz and Casillas families. So they began to raise cattle along the Medina River, and were involved in the cattle trade between Spanish Louisiana and South Texas. So these vaqueros were Texas's first cowboys, right? So just some transfers of power here. We know that in 1821, we have the Mexican independence from Spain. And then so fast forward to 1836, trying to get through these tidbits of information here. We have the signing of the Texas Declaration of Independence from Mexico, establishing the Republic. And then in 1845, we have Texas annexed into the Union, but it wasn't until 1848 with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo that Mexico recognized Texas's annexation. So all of this is significant because within our own community, we have individuals that played a vital role in the shaping of Texas and San Antonio as we know it today. So I'm sure you've visited Legacy High School, and so you would know that it's pretty unique as far as how the layout of the school
was developed. So it symbolically represents, at least the major hallway, represents the community itself and the land, with the Medina River being the main hallway there, right? I believe, and there's different areas of the school that are named after the 3 major crossings that, comprise this area. So I have the Medina River highlighted in red, and we'll be looking at these crossings that are located around these areas. So we have Garzas Crossing, also known as Paseo de las Garzas, at the intersection of Old Somerset Road and the Medina River. Mans Crossing is at the intersection of Old Pearsall Road and the Medina River. And then the Medina Crossing, it was a relatively new community in the late 1880s with the development of the railroad that was built there. All right, so we'll start off with Garzas Crossing. I think I'm doing okay with time. We have Colonel Jose Francisco Ruiz. So he was baptized in the Church of San Fernando de Ver. He took part in the Battle of the Medina in 1813, allying himself with the struggle for Texas independence. He and his nephew, Jose Antonio Navarro, traveled to Washington on the Brazos and signed the Texas Declaration of Independence in 1836. So his father, Juan Manuel Ruiz, was one of the original ranchers of this area at Garzas Crossing. So Colonel Ruiz was also elected the first senator from Bear in the first Congress of the Republic of Texas. He had 4 children with his wife, Josefa Hernandez, one of whom was Francisco Antonio Ruiz, alcalde of San Antonio during the Battle of the Alamo and city alderman from 1837 to 1841. So here we're looking at a lovely painting, family painting of the Blas Maria Herrera family. So Herrera was known as the Paul Revere of the Texas Revolution, delivering the news of the approaching troops of Santa Anna. So he married Maria Antonia Ruiz, who was daughter of Colonel Jose Francisco Ruiz. So shortly after their marriage, they established the ranch, the Ruiz Herrera Ranch, becoming the first permanent settlers of the area. And they had 10 children. But shortly after the Battle of the Alamo, Herrera was appointed to escort and protect Jose Antonio Navarro and Jose Francisco Ruiz during their trip to Washington on the Brazos for the signing of the Texas Declaration of Independence from Mexico. So that's an image. Initially I imagined this like grand building and this beautiful structure, and I found this photo. I was like, oh, that's quite humble. So it really wasn't until 1850 that Garzas Crossing became known as Garzas Crossing. So it was named after a ferryman, Miguel de la Garza, who established a ferry across the Medina River to service the newly established stagecoach line between San Antonio and Laredo and the supply trains of the newly arrived United States Army. So Mr. de la Garza married Acoba Herrera, who was daughter of Blas Maria Herrera and Maria Antonia Ruiz. They moved to the family ranch, which became known as Garzas Crossing at this point. There's just so much. So it's important to note that the Ruiz Herrera Ranch was recently spotlighted by Preservation Texas as one of the state's 10 most endangered historic sites for its jacales, which is an example of early Hispanic Texas architecture typically found in the San Antonio region around the 19th century. There are only 5 jacales known to exist within Bexar County. As far as construction goes, it's presumed that lumber from the Alamo or during the U.S. Army occupation was used to construct 2 of the houses on the Ruiz Herrera Ranch. And if you're familiar with the popular story that they found the doors to the Alamo there on their property as well. So it's not unlikely for materials to be reused, but this is what's been found so far. And this panel is in the archive room, so just to look at land ownership of the Ruiz Herrera property. So they established the community's church on their land as well, known as Santísima Trinidad, but they also held social gatherings in one of their pavilions and eventually built a small school known as the Medina School for the community. So they were like the central role of the Von Ormy and Southwest ISD area. So some sites to see if you haven't already. I'm sure you have. The castle on the Medina, which belonged to land speculator, engineer, and San Antonio merchant Enoch Jones. So he immigrated to Texas sometime before 1837, and he controlled as much as 175,000 acres. He retired in his castle in the Medina, which is at Garza's Crossing, and which remains to be the largest house in the area and reported to be the first in Texas to have indoor plumbing. So after his death, his wife and his children, they stayed there, they grew up there, they were raised in the area, but eventually sold the residence to Count Norbert von Orme of Offenburg, who was an Austrian nobleman who arrived in the area with 20 servants, and his wife, Countess Emma, who was a sensation in the local newspaper. Their stay was short-lived, and they left hastily after 18 months. Supposedly, Countess Emma couldn't get used to the lifestyle, quiet lifestyle there. But it was the same year in 1886 that Postmaster Branson Bywater renamed the town, previously known as Medina Crossing, to Von Ormy, mistakenly misspelling Count Orme's last name. So his last name is O-R-M-A-Y, spelling it O-R-M-Y. But it's charming. It's remained ever since. So moving on to Mann's Crossing. Mann's Crossing was named after the Mann family who immigrated to Texas from France as part of Castro's colony on the upper Medina River. So Henry Castro, we're looking at a photograph of him, was a descendant of Portuguese Jews born in France. So he immigrated to the United States and became a naturalized citizen. In 1842, he entered into a contract with the Texas government to settle a colony in southwest Texas on the Medina River. Between 1843 and 1845, he succeeded in chartering 27 ships, bringing with him 485 families, 455 single men, from France to Texas, just kidding, founding Castro's colony. I have to, I mean, you know. Okay, so also at Mann's Crossing, we have part of the land granted to Samuel McCulloch Jr., a free black soldier in the Texas Revolution who settled in the area in 1852. After an act of Congress allowed him and his family to remain in Texas as a free person of color. So in 1835, he fought at Goliad and was severely wounded in the right shoulder during the storming of the Mexican officers' quarters. It wasn't until 1837 when President Sam Houston signed into law giving rights to all free blacks residing in Texas at the time of the Texas Declaration of Independence that McCulloch was able to receive his land. This same year, in 1837, Mr. McCulloch Jr. married Mary Laura Neves, a white woman. They were never prosecuted for breaking the law against interracial marriage, which had passed just a couple of months before. They remained in the area until Mary's death in 1847, and they had 4 children. So here's a portrait of an elderly Mr. McCulloch. So in 1850, he located 2/3 of his league of land on Frio Road and the south bank of the Medina River at Mann's Crossing. He sold the remaining 1/3 of his land, and in 1852, moved with his family to the region of Mann's Crossing, where he lived as a farmer and cattleman. In 1857, he co-founded and donated part of his land to the development of the Medina Baptist Church, which comprised of a diverse community of Anglo, African, and Mexican individuals. So highlighted in red is his land along the Medina River. If you go down Old Pearsall Road, you will see the historical marker for his cemetery too, as well as the Krause House. So Has anyone seen these homes? Okay, I just want to make sure. I want to know my audience here. So let's look at the Kraus family. They were natives of Austria. It was in 1875 that they moved to southwestern Bexar County at Mans Crossing with their 6 children. The family purchased 101.3 acres of the old McCulloch land grant from N. de la Zerda for $550. So with the help of neighbors, so giving us a sense of community and what it was like, they built a small log cabin measuring 17 feet by 16 feet. The porch along the west wall of the cabin was used as a sleeping space, and the kitchen was built from rocks or sandstones quarried from their land. All of this, yes, was hauled with the help of neighbors and community. So you can see here that it says home, post office, and jail, because this was a time where you could do anything from your home, basically. So we have Anton Sr., who was appointed postmaster of Mans Crossing, and a small part of their home did function as a post office. Anton Sr. was also elected constable of Precinct 5 of Bexar County. Anton Jr. was a policeman in San Antonio, and Charles, who was another son, was special deputy in the area of McDonough and Mans Crossing. Throughout the years, the Kraus house was used as a stop for the Texas Rangers, escorting prisoners to San Antonio, and who were often chained to the cedar posts that supported the porch, the front porch there. So, pretty interesting story. So their land ownership of the Kraus property. Notice, I think it's pretty significant thing to know here. In 2017, you can see that the property was gifted to Southwest ISD from Rose Parsons Collins and the San Antonio Conservation Society. And due to time, I just want to share a couple of photographs. This room would not have been possible without the help of Mary Castro and Professor Rudy de los Santos at Northwest Vista College. They were very generous in lending me photographs. So these are from Mary Castro in particular. She's from the area. If you don't know her, you should. Dedicate a day to the self-proclaimed president of their historical association in Von Ormy. She is really a treasure trove of knowledge, and so she shared a lot of her photographs with me, as well as Rudy de los Santos. So they're currently in the works of creating a small museum on Northwest Vista College's campus dedicated to the history of the area. Medina Crossing, last one, we made it. So this one's short and sweet. In 1881, we have the International Great Northern Railroad that constructed the first rail line connecting San Antonio and Laredo. So quickly, a new community sprang up around the train depot that was built on the south bank of the Medina. This new community was called Medina Crossing at this time. Rail access changed the local economy from cattle ranching to cotton and winter vegetable farming, just so we know the effects of this railroad. And as an example of travel rates, for a fun fact here, to get from Chicago to San Antonio, it took around 50 hours, so just over 2 days. For first-class passengers, the cost was $56.40. Today, that would be close to $1,300 if we converted it. Inflation. And for immigrants, though, the cost was $84.75, which is about $1,900 today. So just to share a couple of photographs, we know that that the church played an important role in the community. So we have the original Santísima Trinidad from 1866 that's located on the Herrera Ranch family. The Herrera Ranch, sorry, I don't know why I said family. That one, it was destroyed, but now functions as a cemetery. So you can actually go visit it, and then we have several new churches that were built, rebuilt for various reasons, including the construction of I-35, widening that area. And so now, the bottom right-hand corner, we have a photograph of the most recent church. Instead of Santísima Trinidad, was renamed Sacred Heart of Jesus Church. Oh, also in the cemetery that's on the ranch, Blas Maria Herrera and Francisco Antonio Ruiz were buried there, so you can go visit it. Give you an idea what's going on. 20th century, the town had 2 grocers, a small general store, a cotton gin, and a population of 350. And you can see that they also had a sanitarium. So this is an ad from one of the Texas State Journal of Medicine for the Von Ormy Cottage Sanitarium. In 1946, the population was still 350. So it's said to illustrate the effects of World War I and II, but also suggested is redistricting. So that's why we may have those numbers. More photographs that were lent by Miss Mary Castro here, the Von Ormy School. So just after 1900,
Mr. Fraser.
Mr. Fraser's in it. Oh, that's not nice. That's so funny.
Probably my dad.
What year is that?
Oh, this is early
1935.
20th century, 1900s. Yes.
The bottom one says 1935.
Does it say 1935? Oh, the bottom one does say 1935. So we have the Von Ormy School that opened and provided classes through the 8th grade. The Medina School we know operated at Garza's Crossing that was founded by the Herrera family. By the early 1950s, the Von Ormy School closed, and we have a Southwest Rural High School District, later renamed Southwest Independent School District, organizing and establishing a large campus at Mance Crossing. Since then, Southwest ISD, as you know, has grown to encompass 11 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, and 2 high schools, with Legacy High School as its most recent addition.
Can I have copies of that?
Of the presentation?
No.
Oh.
Well, no, I'm sorry. The school pictures that you just showed.
These?
Can I have copies of
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. I can email them to you, so just send me your email.
Ida probably has 4 or 5 people there. She's
I
kid.
probably have my grandmother's probably in that picture.
Oh, that's awesome.
I would think. Or my aunts, some of them are in there. They went to Von Ormy School.
Well, a lot of research is still being done. I know that they have community gatherings at the Sacred Heart of Jesus Church. I'm trying to think, they just did one during the summer, but they try to have them at least twice a year where people are bringing everything they have so we can preserve it for documentation and ultimately presentation for the community. So, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ma'am.
Great
That was
lady.
awesome.
You did an excellent job.
I have my dad with lots of pictures.
So just, I want to make a couple of comments and thank Ms. Alvarez for, we're trying to get our history into Southwest Legacy High School, and her name came by way of someone who we contacted the Texas Cultural Institute. And so we got in contact with her, did a great job. We're actually going to use her to do the same thing at Southwest High School. Because history is a big part of who we are, and we want to make sure that we accomplish that. We are also going to take this video that she has here, maybe a longer one, and we'd like that to be looping in the lobby of our City Hall. And at both of our high schools where we have monitors, we want that history to continuously be looping. There's something we're working on with Jesse to make sure that we can make that happen. But not just our high schools, but our middle schools and elementary. We want it to be everywhere. So I want to thank her, number one.
Yes,
we're not
awesome.
We have a lot more work.
Yay, that's what I want to hear.
We had to be strategic in making sure we bought this when Keith Byron was going to be here because we didn't hope we would have enough time. But Keith really contributed to a lot of what we're doing to capture our history. And I know he's not here. We're going to have to do this presentation. I think,
For him,
in the
absolutely.
future, for him. But
Out looking for arrowheads.
Can we do that?
I'm
When
looking
he's
for arrowheads
talking about
for
looping the
reason.
video, maybe you could narrate it or something, a
you
narration.
did a
Do you
wonderful
want to hear
job.
my voice?
Well,
Yes.
just, there should be a narration to the, to the video, and then maybe, and even to be able to read it to, you can either listen or read.
Right, yeah.
Do you have a card?
I'm so glad you have that, but I can give you that.
Yeah, that'd be, if you, just give it to her and then.
so that everyone knows what we're trying to do, capture this. We actually had Ms. Alvarez do a 45 minute to an hour presentation to to the legacy staff before we started off the year. So the
That's
staff,
nice. Wow.
they have this history. They went through
Yeah.
this longer version.
They can share it.
She did a great job. I didn't even know you were a big country.
That's awesome.
So, that's all we have on that. So we're not done with the reward to the board. Who's the principal of history? Who was your principal at Big Country?
I'm sorry?
Who was your principal at Big Country?
I don't remember. It was a long time ago. I'm so
It wasn't Mr. Rodriguez, was it?
sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Was it a man?
Yes,
Yeah.
that sounds more familiar. We're talking early 90s.
Yep.
Yes.
Big Cliff.
Awesome, awesome.
All right, the next thing we got on the agenda is the revision of FL local.
Good afternoon, board.
Refreshing.
One of the things to talk about with senior staff and also before bringing it to you, we ran it through TASB, is some revisions to policy FL local, which deals specifically with student records. And what we're looking to change is student directory information of what we release to people that send in TPI requests and protect their information, but also limit the amount of information we give out. So it redefines, it's the last 2 pages of what that policy is, which is school-sponsored purposes and for military purposes of what information will be released. This is just an item of information to, we'll bring it back at the next board meeting for approval before we move on. But here to ask if you have any questions relating to the proposed revision.
Anybody?
Good job, folks.
Thank you, sir.
This will be our first reading, and we'll bring it back to the second reading. And 109 is going to be very long, so see what I can do when we get 109.
Do you have executive session? Do you need it? Well, we're moving right along. All right, before we close, does anybody have anything to say? Cover anything today? All right. Not, we're adjourned at 12:14.
Wow.